I have a couple of questions. I don't know how many I'm allowed to ask. So my first question is, how can soft plastics be integrated into the construction industries for buildings? Because I think you mentioned something about that. So how is it possible to utilize them as building construction materials? And the second question is, how does carbon capture actually work? Like, do you bury the plastic bottles near trees and they absorb the carbon content of the bottles, or do you plant trees in industrial areas and then the trees absorb them and keep them? I'm so sorry. And
No,
how
I will not
the
well.
carbon that is also
So I just want
captured,
to
how
answer
do
the
you
question.
extract
I
it,
will not
one,
keep the price
and
from
then
here.
how do you change it into the currency that is carbon credits? Because, like, I don't know, it's just for the layman that I am in this situation. Thank
Right. So I'll start with the first question. How do you integrate soft plastics into construction chemicals? First of all, the question should you integrate plastics into a certain value chain? Because the fact that when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And instead of, I see equivalent solution, quote unquote, where people try and bring composite materials together that don't have any sustainable end of life options. Because think of it, is this going to become construction and demolition waste that will then just be discarded? So you typically want to stick with monomaterials, except you're starting from the chemical building blocks that you use to manufacture and add mixtures that go into construction chemicals. So you want to stay away from bringing composite materials together as much as possible, and instead look for other high throughput applications. Like, can we go back to the building blocks that we can use to make other specialty chemicals? Can we go to what's the holy grail of material flow, which is closed loop circulation? The material that used to make something can go back infinitely and be reinforced for that same purpose. So there's that. The fact that you have a hammer, just be careful so that everything doesn't look like a nail and you want to apply the same situation, same solution to every scenario. Now, on carbon capture utilization of storage, so I'll start with carbon credits. What usually happens is there's a flow of material. So there's a carbon footprint or a carbon emissions. And again, it's not just carbon, it's greenhouse gas emissions, right? So you say, where does it come from? Where's the input? Where's the output? So you do a balance of, there's this thing with the chemical engineering called the material balance. It's basically an equation that shows you what is going in, what is coming out, garbage in, garbage out. So you do that carbon accounting, showing where carbon is going out, coming in for a particular activity, and then you assign a carbon footprint to it. Now, if you are acting as a carbon sink, it means you are using carbon, because sometimes in construction materials you need CO2 to be integrated into materials, right? For chemical processing. So if it's a carbon sink, that means you get a certain amount of value for the amount of carbon that you're taking in, right? And if it's a carbon source, you are, well, in some cases penalized, but you're disincentivized to do that if you're putting out carbon. So that's how the credit system works, right? So where are the carbon sources and sinks? Can we do a balance of greenhouse gases on your process? If it's taking in carbon or reducing emissions, then you're positive when you get a credit. Is that correct? Now, carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And you very quickly discover that in the same way that technology is specialized, each solution sort of has to delve deeper into it, and it's like a whole different field. So the way it works is that you convert, depending on the form in which you have the carbon, but typically this is CO2, atmospheric CO2. So that is captured, and it could be then densified into solid forms, and sometimes that's isolated. Some people are trying to make fuels from carbon, so it goes from gas. You're trying to trap it in solid form so that you can use it as a fuel, or so that you can bury it somewhere. So you can capture carbon, you can use it, or you can store it and isolate it. So I like to make a joke that the destiny that was for radioactive elements and radiation, which is deep isolation, has not continued to happen yet. So, I hope that answers your questions. Oh, okay, not exactly. Let's talk after second out. Thank you.
Yes, let me just add to that in as simple as possible. I don't think that, so imagine you have the mangroves, yeah, and you have the industrial, like an industrial city. One is, and planes flying. One is emitting the bad gas. One is emitting the good gas, yeah. So it's not like you're going to, it's offsetting each other. So if you listen to, was it Hein? If you watched his presentation, they would accord a certain, so let's say 10 trees, or is equivalent to this amount of carbon credit. So it's as simple as that, okay, if you have 300,000 in this place, when you divide it by 10, 10, 10, then you have your equivalent of carbon credit, and then on the upside, the industrialization, the gas emitting, so that is why data and statistics, like they are saying, is very important. So simply put like that, it is not a case of, but do you understand? It'll be better now. All right. That was my layman explanation as well. I go to,
hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Praise Arokamani. So my question is, how do we manage the relationship between population development and these emissions? Now, for instance, like how we know, like even the result was saying and how Mr. Aki have said, population in the US right now is not the same as what it was like some years back. And as we all know, population also like comes with development. Now, let's say now the carbon credits, carbon credits, industrial countries pay industrial companies that emit gas above a certain line have to like pay for this. So I think, like my own personal opinion is that, okay, now let's say I have a company that produces more than this, and I know I can just allocate these funds to pay for my credits to have good scores, yeah, and that does not really stop or make me look at how to curb or reduce these emissions. That's one. And two, so acquiring these good scores is by pumping the money back to countries that emit low, and that's by telling them not to tamper with their natural mangroves and everything. But now, let's say Nigeria in 10, 15 years, we have more population, and we said, okay, you know what, we want to also tap into our development, and we start, tampering these things. So now, who else now do we now turn to? So mine is like how do we manage this circle, increasing population, development, and emitting these gases? Like how do we manage it in total? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a really good question, and that's actually what's at the heart of all of this. Because yes, we must develop, we must continue to develop, but then we must develop sustainably and responsibly. And it's not only those of us in the global south, but the global north. And so what is happening right now is that the global north, the countries that have admitted that they were the ones who are responsible for the wealth of these emissions, the most of these emissions. And so what they're trying to do right now is to seek balance, which is what COP28 is about. So that how do we continue to develop without increasing the amount of carbon dioxide and the other toxic gases above the already stated margins of danger? And then how do we start reducing this? And how do we make sure that we do not destroy the world anymore? So that is sort of like the question. But for your generation, you guys have to now really think of really clever ways. Because before, you could just cut down the forest, you could just drill oil, you could just do this. But now we've moved further than that. We have to think of new materials. We have to think of new ways of using and creating and bringing these things to the market. And we must remember that, most of all these things are still here. There's still millions of tons of plastic. And so if we go the circular route, you will always have this legacy plastic, these millions of tons that you can keep on just turning around and turning around, And the same with the metals, the gold, whatever it is. Once it's been brought out and refined, we are all on this earth. We're not going anywhere. Same as the materials. So it is circular economy really is the key for your development. I hope that helped.
Follow-up question to what Chris asked and to your answer. Like, how do we leverage the natural assets we have when funding for things like disability studies and forthright, it's not like you can just go and ask somebody.
That's a very good question again, because in fact it's like a dark hole in getting from where we are to where we want to be. So we have funding. Funding is always in the hands of the banks. It's called, there are agencies that can give you funding, but everything has to flow through the financial system, and they're the gatekeepers in all matters. And finance people look at everything from a finance perspective. And so, which is why I was going on, you always have to show where the value is. And hopefully if you can show where the value is, and then if pressure can be brought by the media, by other agencies, traditional rulers and things like that, to highlight where they want the banks to direct the finance at, that is where we will make the difference, and then you will, your projects or whatever can now be financed by the banks. Because what we have now is banks would rather give it to traditional sources like trading or oil and gas, because there's a model, it's already set, they know what the route is to profitability. So we have to create new models, and so for this we need risk capital, and risk capital is always had to come by, and so I guess one of the points of this is to try and see how we can get risk capital, and it really is just by showing what it is you're trying to do, and hopefully somebody will believe in you and give you the risk capital. But it's data. You need data, and you need models that have been proven and are waiting to be scaled. And once you can get that, things that have set precedent that you can show, then hopefully the doors to financing the new projects will come up.